Americans, we have our problem. Our United States government plans to spend over $130 billion on upgrading just one weapon system. That's a number so incomprehensible that few people have any idea as to the size of such a fortune, so let's untangle this number. Put $100,000 into an account every hour of every day, 24/7 all year long. That comes to only $876 million, which doesn't even amount to $1 billion. To save up $131 billion at that rate, it would take 150 years. That's amazing. Paying $100,000 every hour in the next 150 years is what it would take to pay for this project. And that's not considering any cost overruns. Even though it hasn't yet scratched any dirt, this project isn't even brand new. It's a replacement of 400 existing underground missiles and launch control centers in underground silos in the states of Montana, North Dakota, and Wyoming. Since the 1960s, the missiles in the silos have been ICBMs, which is the acronym for Intercontinental Ballistic Missiles. These are nuclear warhead missiles that have undergone updates. The 400 missiles currently in the silos are the most recent version. There's not much to see when you drive by one of these missile sites. As the missile silos and control centers are underground, they can fit right into the landscape and be largely unrecognizable. I was born and raised in Montana and did come to recognize these sites when I'd passed by one. As they were hidden underground, we didn't know too much about them, except that we knew they were designed to kill millions of humans, and Mom and her friends feared one going off accidentally. Dad complained a little less because the project meant a big cash infusion for the state. But every time we saw a missile installation, we were reminded of the dangers of a nuclear explosion and the fact that the rocket below was designed to obliterate more people than lived in our entire state. An accidental explosion could very well result in a horrific calamity that the living would never forget. We'll look at some of the original construction photos while we talk about why these nuclear warhead missiles are parked in the middle of the country, especially when submarines have become the most effective way to launch missiles against Russia. Back in the 1950s, fearing that Soviets would start a nuclear war, the United States government wanted a nuclear triad with missiles that could be launched from air, land, and sea. The ICBMs in Montana, North Dakota, and Wyoming are the land-based part of that triad. The trajectory path for these missiles is not to go west and over the Pacific Ocean, but north, over Canada and the North Pole. While the missiles in the 400 silos are the most recent version ICBMs, the government wants to completely replace the existing system with new control centers, new silos, and modern Sentinel missiles made by defense contractor Northrop Grumman. This is an extremely costly project. A few months ago, the cost estimate for this project was $96 billion. Since then, the cost jumped to over $130 billion, which equates to $1 million times 130,000. That's a lot of money. Given that the project hasn't even broken dirt yet, we are almost sure to see more multi-billion-dollar cost increases. Since our silo system was built, we've developed Ohio-class submarines, which now prowl ocean waters undetected and are much more effective in delivering atomic warheads and deterring an attack from our enemies. This fleet of subs can carry up to 960 nuclear warheads and can be stationed much closer to Russia and other adversaries than our silo-based missiles, greatly reducing the time it takes a missile to reach its target. Submarines have made a silo system located thousands of miles away from their targets much less effective and no longer the deterrent they once were. The government is also in the early stages of replacing the Ohio-class submarines with 12 new Columbia-class submarines that are scheduled for deployment in the year 2031. This program is still in its development stage and already has a projected cost of $267 billion. That's over $22 billion a submarine, and the total project is already about double today's estimated cost for the Sentinel program. Getting back to our 400 missile silos, be aware that the project calls for making many more missiles than we have available silos to house them. Production calls for 634 Sentinel missiles, which includes an extra 184 missiles to, quote, demonstrate periodically to allies and potential adversaries alike that the system works. Yes, 184 extra missiles at over 100 million apiece, just for chest beating. It seems that Congress hasn't thought about whether we really need to update and replenish each and every one of the 400 Minutemen missile installations. We could save billions by reducing the number of missiles and decommissioning 100 or 200 missiles, or even 300. Remember when North Korea did its first nuclear test in the year 2006 and the next year declared that it had a nuclear weapon? It scared the hell out of us. We can scare the hell out of Russia and our other adversaries with far fewer than 400 land-based nukes. It would be one thing to throw money at such a questionable project if we could afford it, but the truth is, we really can't afford to keep spending money like we've been spending it. Last year, our government spent a whopping 38% more than the revenue it took in, and the interest cost adds more to our national debt, which now equates to over $100,000 for every person, every man, woman, boy, and girl residing in the USA. Keeping our economy strong is a very important part of our national defense. Even a recent article in Stars and Stripes strongly criticized the Sentinel program, stating, "Whatever strategic value ICBMs may have held in the past, in our current security environment, they serve as little more than a bottomless pit, deeper than the massive silos they're housed in, into which the Pentagon throws taxpayers' hard-earned money." Doing what every good American should do, I wrote my Congressman, Mike Garcia of California's 27th District, noting the need to reduce our national debt and suggesting one way to save billions of dollars is by not replacing every one of the 400 missile silos. Garcia's reply noted the national debt to be a problem but didn't make mention of the Sentinel program. Garcia is a former Air Force pilot and a strong advocate for seemingly all defense expenditures. After retiring from the Air Force, Congressman Garcia went to work as an executive for Raytheon, a maker of missiles and other weaponry, and the second largest defense contractor for the U.S. government. Garcia is heavily supported by defense contractors and has sway on defense purchases as he currently sits on the House Committee on Appropriations, which has one of the largest jurisdictions of any committee in Congress. As a committee member, Garcia has direct responsibility for appropriating funding for almost every function of the federal government, including our nation's defense spending. We would be financially ahead and live in a much safer world if we would reduce our production of killing machinery and instead focus more on living in peace and harmony with our world neighbors, while spending money like a drunken sailor, and our national defense budget is about 10 times what Russia spends on its war machine. Our past intrusions have failed to either coax or force other countries into running themselves as we see fit. And along the way, we've created a great deal of animosity toward the United States. Remember this, the greatest deterrent to nuclear war, or any war for that matter, is peace. Unfortunately, our government has failed us in both creating peace and running this country on a sensible budget. If any of this strikes a chord with you, please write your congressperson. If you don't write your congressperson, probably the most often they're going to hear from you is once every 2 years when you cast your vote on election day. And your vote is probably not going to be as interesting to them as the special interest money they're buying for. If you want to see how our military contractors are scalping us by charging excessive profits, take a look at this 60 Minutes episode. For a glimpse at another excessive defense expenditure, have a look at our YouTube piece on what's replacing our military's Hummer vehicles.